a Playlyst original.
Welcome to the Pilot Podcast,
where we review the pilot episodes of TV shows to answer your question, should I watch this?
My name is BJ.
And my name is Mitu.
And this week, we're watching Apples Never Fall on Peacock, Three Body Problem on Netflix, X-Men 97 on Disney+, and Diarra from Detroit on BET+.
So stay tuned to the end to find out BJ's favorite X-Men.
Oh. Okay, I'll need to think about it. And while I do that, how about you tell us about a tennis family mystery?
You're talking about Apples Never Fall on Peacock. Everyone who's anyone in West Palm Beach knows the Delaney family because of their long-running tennis academy. But when Joy, played by Annette Bening, and Stan, played by Sam Neill, retire, and when a wounded young woman, Savannah, played by Georgia Flood, arrives on their doorstep, the entire family's world is turned upside down. And when Joy, the Delaney matriarch, suddenly goes missing, her 4 children are left to piece everything together that they thought they knew about their parents.
Ooh. I think what worked really well with these 4 siblings piecing together everything is that throughout the course of this episode, we learn the Delaney family is very complicated. They have a lot of unresolved issues with each other, and it makes all their scenes with each other so tense.
Yes, I think that what Leanne Moriarty, please excuse me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, does well is wealthy families in distress. We saw that with Big Little Lies, and we're seeing that here with Apples Never Fall. And I think that there have been some tough critiques of this show because of the comparison to Big Little Lies. But this is fun too, and specifically because I just believe each mess of a character. I love that Amy, played by Alison Brie, is a life coach, kind of the flighty daughter, it seems. We have Jake Lacey as Troy, who's the wealthy son. We have Logan, played by Connor Merrigan-Turner, who seemed to be the closest to being a professional athlete, and now he's a marina manager to Stan's dismay. And lastly, we have Brooke, the youngest, played by Essie Randalls, and she's a physical therapist who seemingly runs a successful business, but truly can't quite tell. And I like that in a mystery show, the characters are a little one note, where it's like, this is the flighty one, this is the rich one who's kind of an alternate patriarch to Stan, this is the youngest, and this is the burnout kid. I like when it's a little bit one note so that it makes the mystery more fun and easy to follow.
I agree. I think it helps that their one note personalities let you focus more on all the different relationships they have, because each of the siblings interact with each other differently. Each of them have their own different ways of interacting with the parents, and that all comes together well when Joy goes missing, and now we're trying to figure out who knows what. And they do a really good job of bringing in flashbacks throughout the episode, so they're giving you like breadcrumbs that make you change your opinion of one sibling or one of the parents, and then you change it another way once you learn a little bit more about how these one-note people have just such complicated relationships.
One-note people feels mean, but it's not.
I mean, it's accurate.
I also really like that they're not close. As you're saying, this is a tense family. There's some drama going on between these family members. So it takes Joy being missing for 5 minutes for them to be like, did Dad kill her? I've never liked Dad. I think he might have killed her. Is she dead? Did Dad do it? And so it just took no time. And I like that because this is clearly not a family where they're exposing their vulnerabilities to each other. This is a family of athletes. So they just want to tough it out. They want to be the toughest for Dad. They want to be Daddy's number one boy, like on Succession. And so because of that, they're not picking up the phone and being like, today was tough. I'm just kind of in my feelings today, or I'm having a tough time with my girlfriend, or whatever it is that people are going through. So they're definitely not going to have some intimate conversation with Stan or each other about what they really think is going on with their mom. Instead, it's a lot of people thinking very insularly that I think is portrayed really well, of just being suspicious of each other based on the smallest things because they don't know each other well and don't speak to each other. And I loved that. I loved that if I spent a long time with one character, it made me really suspect another character. Just depending on through whose eyes I'm seeing the show, now I'm suspicious of someone else. That was fun.
That's a really good way to look at it. They're all feeling pressure to maintain this Delaney family reputation. And because of that, they are hiding so much from each other that they're paranoid. And then we as the audience only know as much as they do, or really as much as the kids do, seemingly. And that leaves us a little paranoid. Like, who can we trust? I have the same questions as these kids, and I'm not any closer to solving Joy's disappearance.
That's why I think this show captures the energy of the book really well. I read this book last year. I was thrilled to see it being adapted for a show because you're just constantly tense. Everyone is suspicious of everyone, frankly, including of themselves, because again, these are athletes, so they're tough on themselves too. So it's just, to your point, paranoia until the last pages.
Ooh. So you have reached the last pages of the book, but do you want to reach the last episode of this series?
Yes, we were joking about this while we were talking through our notes. I was watching the show and I was like, ugh, what happened with this character? That was such a suspicious move. And I had to remind myself, like, I know what happened. I read the source material. And so for the show to pull me in again, even knowing exactly what happens at the end of this mystery, or at least the basic part of what happened, I'm sure the show might take it in a couple of different directions. That means they've done a good job of sucking me in. And so I look forward to more episodes. I would watch again seriously, and I would recommend it to you if you are a mystery lover, and even if you've already read this book.
That's a strong sign if you want to go through a mystery a second time.
Yeah.
I would watch again casually. I'm really liking the sibling dynamics and their questioning of the situations. And there's this very suspicious character that shows up on the Delaney doorsteps. And I want to know more about that plot line as well.
Let's take things from one flashback show to another.
You're talking about Three Body Problem on Netflix. Zine Singh plays Ye Wenji, an astrophysicist who saw her father brutally murdered during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Later, she was conscripted by the military because of her scientific background, and her fateful decisions at that base echo across space and time to a group of scientists in present-day London, forcing them to face humanity's greatest threat. So, Mitu, what did you think of this physics-based show?
Wow, what a scientific show for Science Hive. I was so happy for you. When we watched this. I thought BJ has on his white coat. He's holding his beakers.
I dressed up.
There's a Bunsen burner on the coffee table in front of him.
It might be a fire hazard, but I did it. Yeah, sure.
He did the whole thing.
I see why you thought that, because this show really leans heavily into a mystery based around physicists who are also talking about particle physics and some really high level concepts that don't come up that often. And I feel like the weird things that they're talking about, like the particle accelerator is not behaving properly. So this means the science we know for the last 60 years doesn't make sense, is not well explained to a general audience.
Oh, general audience.
Broad audience?
Sure.
And yet,
empty-headed bimbo. What else do you want to call us? The non-scientist community.
That's not what I'm saying. The lay people. What do you?
Oh, that might be the worst one.
I think this show does not shy away from the science, even though some of it's a little murky. But that's what they're going for. And especially with Wenji's past, you see how knowledge is dangerous and powerful and mysterious.
Speaking of Wenji's past, that's the most interesting part of the show to me. Your description, the description for the show, makes it seem so interesting. The idea that there's a decision that Wenji made decades ago that has all of these huge implications, could lead to the end of the world. The particle accelerators, which is something that is mentioned in any sci-fi movie. They're acting in a way that is funky. There are weird things in the sky. Maybe the stars are flashing. Some people see it, some people don't. All of that was happening in present day, and I just wasn't quite invested in it. But the backstory, so Wenji going from seeing her father beheaded by the government to then having to be a scientist for the government and making these concessions along the way, partly because of her own curiosity and interest in science, was fascinating.
True. And it's weird because Augie, played by Isa Gonzalez, who is a scientist in the present, is kind of meant to be the lead scientist taking us through the present day storyline. And one of her friends died by suicide. People around her are losing their jobs. And now she is having some sort of hallucination and vision, which all sounds intense and mysterious, but was not that engaging.
It oddly dragged. I will say the scenes that were funny were the scientists when they were just kind of ribbing each other. I liked seeing John Bradley back on my screen as a scientist named Jack, who has Jack's snacks. I also liked the scenes with Benedict Wong, who is investigating what is happening, but still, it wasn't as interesting as what was happening in the past. I would almost prefer this as an epic. Maybe we've seen just too many epics recently, so my mind is trained on that. But let's just watch Wenji. Let's just sort of hone in and watch her go through.
Honestly, I would like that as well. Let's focus on this story in the 1960s. Let's see that through. And then we'll eventually get to present day London. And maybe those characters will feel more relevant. Because with all of this setup, it's still very mysterious at the end of this pilot.
Yes, there just wasn't enough reveals maybe or clarity that it made me interested to uncover more. And perhaps they didn't need to have reveals. Perhaps they could have just made the mystery in present day a bit more compelling. And then I would be still seated and wanting to learn more. But instead, I just felt kind of tired after this pilot. I have heard good things about the show overall. I've heard very, very good things about the book.
Same.
And so I'm sure it improves past this first episode. I just think this wasn't a strong pilot.
I agree. That's always disappointing when the source material's good. I see the potential for the story, but this pilot didn't hook me, and I worry it's not going to hook enough people to stick with the whole season.
Will you watch more episodes of Three Body Problem on Netflix?
That's a tough question. I'm going to go with would watch while folding laundry. I don't think I want to put too much of my time and energy into this show, but I want to give it a second chance. How do you feel?
When you are folding laundry, how will you understand the scenes that are not in English?
You didn't know I have a third eye?
Just reading the captions?
I can fold laundry and look up, read a line, fold, look up. I'm not too worried about it.
Okay, I believe in you. You're a very smart scientist, as you've reminded me. So, I am but a lay person, so I can't cook and then read and go back to cooking back and forth. I don't know that I would trust myself to fully track
I trust
what's
you.
happening.
I think you could do it.
That means a lot, that vote of confidence. But for me, I think this is my stop on the Three Body Problem train. I was so confused through this first episode. I think if you are not a sci-fi person, I don't think this is the show to bring you into sci-fi. There are sci-fi shows that I have really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
This is not one, I think, for the non-sci-fi community to bring us in.
Mm-hmm. And quick warning, there is a very bloody and violent opening scene.
Yes, true. All right, Beach. Well, why don't you take us from one show catered for you to another?
That felt a little targeted. You're talking about X-Men 97 on Disney Plus, picking up after the events of X-Men, the animated series, which ran from 1992 to 1997. The X-Men are now facing dangerous new challenges following the loss of their leader, Professor Charles Xavier. So me too. Were you excited for this series that picks up right where the animated series left off? Like, next day.
Great concept. I love this for X-Men Hive.
Mm-hmm.
Did I even know this show was coming? No. Did I remember the 1992 to 1997 run? No. Am I familiar with any X-Men characters beyond Halle Berry's Storm? No. I don't even necessarily remember the X-Men movies if I have seen them. I just know Halle Berry was Storm. And so that is the level of knowledge. Oh, and Rebecca Romaine was somebody, Blue.
Yes.
And that is the level of knowledge I'm bringing into this, Mystique. So, you know, I love this for Hive. I can tell that Hive probably ate this up because I don't think everything has to be for everybody. And they did not Marvel this. They did not go like, okay, here's the backstory, here's the lore. We're going to explain each character. We'll piecemeal this. They dropped us right into an action scene, and then we watch the group hang out. They don't even stop and say who is who. They just start interacting, start showing off their powers. And so I just strapped in for the ride.
I thought this was an interesting choice. Disney did Echo recently, where the pilot had a whole summary of Echo's past and what happened in Hawkeye.
Yeah.
But this X-Men series, they really said, this is just what happened after X-Men, the animated series. We're assuming that you watched X-Men, the animated series, and we're not going to assume anything else. Because they really do dive right in. They don't explain anyone's relationships. They don't explain what had been happening with Trask and the Sentinels. It's just another day, which I think is kind of fun that they aren't spending that time on the background. And they also are able to make it feel like the original series, which I didn't watch regularly, but I do remember it. And the opening, I thought was like very classic and well known, but you know, some people missed it.
What really helped me is our friend JP Karliak, whom we interviewed for this show. He voices Morph. And Morph was a pot stirrer with the friend dynamics. And so that genuinely helped me understand some of the relationship dynamics because he would morph into someone and tease someone. And I'd be like, okay, so this one doesn't get along with this one, or this one doesn't like this one because of who Morph is pretending to be right now. That genuinely helped me understand the story while being very funny.
Wow, I never thought of it that way as a learning mechanism.
I also think the story is interesting of, you know, Trask or Sentinel or whatever entity it is that is humans for humans, like whatever that was called, of the people trying to get rid of the X-Men. It sounds like it's perhaps a few different entities trying to Voltron together.
Oh, look at that reference.
Is that the correct nerd reference?
I mean, Voltron's a different series, but it's a nerd reference.
Okay. Nailed it.
You used it properly. Yes.
I thought it was very interesting that the slogan for humans, or whatever that thing was called, was tolerance is extinction. I thought that was really interesting. And it immediately explained the stakes to me that people do not like X-Men. And for the humans that do like X-Men, that like might be temporary, where it's just like fun right now and en vogue, but not necessarily a long-standing acceptance.
Yes, X-Men and mutants, the not so subtle lessons and stories about accepting people who are different.
Yes. I was like, okay, I get it. It's like racism or something.
Yeah. It's anything you want to map to
Any
it.
ism or obia, that's what we're doing here. And so that really helped me understand, I was just grabbing life raft speed. Like there's just little donuts floating around me. I was in the water. I was like, okay, tolerance is extinction. Okay, Morph is teasing Wolverine and pretending to be Jean Grey. There has to be something there. And I was just grabbing for what I could grab.
I think you did a great job. I think the show did a great job with the action. I really liked the portrayal and animation of people's powers. I liked the reference to Omega level mutants with Storm. And I also feel like they did a good job of, I guess, like keeping it comic booky. They didn't try and modernize it too much. Like this is just what you would expect from a comic book story.
I liked that a lot. And the animation style I know we've discussed just feels like that too.
So with that great feel, will you watch more episodes of X-Men 97?
I think for non-X-Men Hive, if you are interested,
okay,
let's go to X-Men 92.
Okay.
Because I think we need to, or whatever that one is called, maybe just X-Men?
X-Men, the animated series, yeah.
I think you have to start with X-Men, the animated series. I don't think you can start at X-Men 97. So I think I will try X-Men, the animated series, because there's enough there that I was interested. I just had no idea what was going on. And, which I think is fair, the show was like, girl, you are on your own. If you wasn't with us shooting in the gym in 97, you do not want to be part of this basketball game in 2024.
Wow, I'm excited to hear that you want to experience more X-Men. I think going back to the animated series is a great choice. I would watch again casually starting from X-Men 97. I don't remember everything from the animated series, but I know enough about these characters to follow along with this new story. I'll keep going from where they're picking up.
All right, another one for X-Men Hive.
So how about we go from superheroes to Detroit?
You're talking about Diarra from Detroit on BET+. Diarra, played by show creator Diarra Kilpatrick, is a divorcing school teacher who refuses to believe she's been ghosted by her rebound Tinder date. Her search for this missing man pulls her into a decades-old mystery involving the Detroit underworld. And as the case unfolds, her coworkers, friends, and lovers become unlikely allies as she falls down a rabbit hole.
Ooh. So me too. I have to be honest. I read that this was a comedy, and the opening scene threw me off because it's very much like a dark thriller setup.
Yes, I thought it was a good heads up that crime is coming. I think that's why I saw it billed as a dark comedy. And it was a bit of a jarring leap to go from that opening scene. It's kind of a flash forward, which I think is used really well in shows like these to help you understand the stakes to come. But then as soon as we come back to present day, she's just being a very, very funny school teacher in Detroit.
Yeah, a lot more laughs, which makes sense for a comedy, but feels very off for the very serious opening scene, where I guess we see she will get to that point. So we're going to laugh a little less as we go.
Yes, it unsettles you. So you're laughing, but you're like, is this haha funny or haha somebody finna die?
Or both.
Or both, because I did tee-hee and haha through this whole first episode.
It was hilarious. Great jokes. Everyone has great comedic timing. And you mentioned this cast of all of her friends, lovers, coworkers. I think they add so much to the comedic value as well.
So funny. We have her bestie, who is also cousins with her soon-to-be ex-husband, Asia, played by the very, very funny Dominique Perry. We have her work husband, T, played by Brian Terrell Clark. We have her frenemy / neighbor, Moni, played by Claudia Logan. And then we also get to meet the trifling soon-to-be ex-husband, Swa, or Francois, played by Morris Chestnut.
Francois.
I would have the breakdown that she is having if me and Morris Chestnut were divorcing. I would not handle that well.
I know you wouldn't. You might act similar to Diarra.
Diarra is the strongest woman I know for being upright after leaving Francois, as trifling as Francois is.
After years.
After years.
So I guess that explains why when she gets ghosted by Chris, she doesn't take it well at all.
And that mystery part of it where she's like, I know this man did not ghost me, was so good. Because on one hand, we see these clues where she's really good at uncovering things. We see her solve mysteries, per se, in school. And when she confronts a would-be robber, we learn that she never forgets a face. And on her date with Chris, she says something to him like, I think I've seen you before. And that comes into play later. So we know she has a nose for this. However, I love that the end of this mystery could be something is in fact going on with Chris, or she was ghosted and she is just having a breakdown along the way, or both. There's definitely like, we can be both, meet in the middle, dance all night about this. And that's what I love about it. And along the way of this chaotic journey, you are just laughing. BJ and I spent, without exaggeration, 25 minutes laughing about different specific lines and jokes from this first episode that cracked us up. I don't want to spoil this because I truly believe that you should just enjoy the show as it happens. But there's a specific scene where she's about to get robbed in her house that happens toward the beginning of the episode. So this is a light spoiler. I laughed through the whole thing. I had to pause it twice because I was like, I'm going to miss jokes.
And there's a lot of jokes.
Yes, there's like a joke per every minute or so on this. It's so funny. It's so well written.
And I think going back to your point with the mystery, the jokes work well with that because we see how talented she is and her intuition when solving odd things going on around her. And there's this other perspective, which everyone around her, her friends, coworkers, her students also put up that,
students too.
Girl,
oh my goodness.
There is another way to look at this, and you're looking kind of like a fool if you don't see it that way.
Get your act together, as delivered as a message, to your point, by her friends, coworkers, boss, and kids around her at school. And her robber.
Dang, everybody.
Everybody.
But she could be right.
And that's the fun of the show.
So I know your rating, but how about you tell the listener what you would rate Diarra from Detroit?
Would watch again, seriously. Mystery Hive, this one is for us. Comedy Hive, this is for us. Mystery and Comedy Hive, i.e. a search party, this is for us.
Wow, they hit you in 3 different groups.
Mm-hmm. Beej, what about you?
I would watch again casually. I am impressed how well the comedy and mystery elements both work well together. Like, the mystery isn't a joke. It's very serious, but the comedy just adds to this world that Diarra is living in.
Truly fantastic television making. Shout out Diarra Kilpatrick. You nailed it with this one.
Well done.
All right, Beach. So before we tell people where they can find more episodes of our show, which of the mutants is your favorite? Or which one is your favorite X-Men?
This is so tough. I don't think I have like a favorite character, like, oh, I would want to be friends with you. But I think there are X-Men where I would want their powers, you know? Like, maybe I'd want to be Jean Grey, but Jean Grey, super powerful telepath, but it always leads to a dark path. Storm, it would be kind of cool to control the weather, but people don't trust her. She's scary because she's so powerful. Wolverine, super healing. He's like super old, like 200 years old. But he also suffered a very painful surgery to put metal over all of his bones. So it's like, or Magneto, cool magnetic powers, but he had to survive the Holocaust. So
oof,
it's really tough. So I'm not going to pick anyone.
I love that I said, which one of these is your favorite? Just like, which one's the most fun? And you're like, I wouldn't be friends with any of them. So let me see whose powers I would yoink from them. You could just say, the coolest one that I loved watching with my Saturday morning cartoons is
Cyclops. Little laser beams. Pew, pew, pew.
Shout out to Laser Eyes.
Which he can't turn off. So that's another problem. That's where he has to wear that visor.
All right, B. Where can people find more episodes of the Pilot Podcast?
You can find more at our website, thepilotpodcast.com, and you can follow us on all of your favorite podcast platforms.
You can also follow us on social media at The Pilot Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and X, and you can send thoughts, feelings, show recommendations, because every other week we do a show recommended by you, our wonderful listeners, to askthepilotpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Bye.